Imagine waking up one day and realizing that not a single idea in your head is truly yours. Not the goals you chase, not the opinions you hold, not even the voice you think is your own inner monologue. You speak, but the words feel borrowed. You scroll, and everything seems familiar, not because you've seen it before, but because it was made for someone like you, by someone you'll never meet. You look around and sense a strange, collective Darcia of millions thinking the same. Thoughts, using the same phrases, laughing at the same jokes, outraged by the same headlines. And then it hits you. You're not thinking, you're repeating. What if your mind is no longer a source, but a relay station? You're not alone. This phenomenon is invisible, but it's everywhere, an erosion not of memory, but of meaning. We live in a world where content floods our senses every waking hour. Posts, videos, threads, arguments, trends constantly shifting, endlessly replacing. We consume more information in a day than some civilizations created in centuries. But the more we consume, the less we create. You've likely noticed it. You want to write something, but everything feels like it's already been said. You want to form your own opinion, but you're bombarded with takes, hot, cold, and everything in between before you even have a chance to feel what you really believe. You want to feel wonder, confusion, but instead you reach for certainty, for explanation, for whatever the algorithm says comes next. We are drowning in information and starving for insight. We confuse knowing facts with understanding truth. We equate scrolling with awareness. We confuse exposure with experience. And worst of all, we think that thinking is still happening. But what if it's not? What if most of what you call thinking is just a looping, echoing accumulation of slogans, trends, and surface-level impressions you didn't choose, but absorbed? What if the originality you pride yourself on is just a carefully curated remix? Here lies the paradox. We live in the most intellectually connected age in history, yet original thought is dying. Not violently, not publicly, but quietly, like a candle slowly starved of oxygen. You can feel it in the way people speak. Everyone has a take, but few have a question. Everyone shares, but few reflect. Everyone debates, but rarely do they wonder. And those who dare to slow down, sit in discomfort, ask inconvenient questions, are often dismissed as naive, contrarian, or out of touch. When was the last time you held an opinion that cost you something? When was the last time you admitted you didn't know? When was the last time you sat with an idea long enough for it to change you? We have traded depth for speed, wisdom for relevance, silence for content, thinking for reacting, and the result? A society that appears informed, but is secretly hollow. A culture that talks endlessly, but rarely listens. A generation that has everything to say but nothing to add. This isn't just a personal problem, it's existential. Because when original thought dies, so does the soul of a civilization. Ideas are how we shape reality. Imagination is how we transcend it. And when we lose our ability to think independently, to wonder, to see through, not just consume the world, we don't just lose creativity, we lose ourselves. Because to think originally is not just to create new ideas, it is to remember who you are beyond the noise. It is to see clearly, not just what is, but what could be. It is to rebel against the mechanical repetition of borrowed language and step into the raw, unfiltered territory of your own mind. And that territory, it's becoming endangered. So ask yourself, how much of your thinking is truly your own? What would you believe if no one told you what to believe? What would you create if you forgot what was expected of you? These questions are not rhetorical. They are a map leading back to a part of you that may have gone silent, but not extinct. And the silence around us now isn't emptiness, it's mourning, the quiet grief of a world that no longer makes room for thought that takes time to bloom. But why? Why is this happening? Who benefits from a culture where everyone talks and no one thinks? What are the psychological and philosophical roots of this collapse? Let's trace the rot to its source. Original thought is a dangerous act. It defies inertia, interrupts patterns, threatens systems. It doesn't just question the world, it questions you. And that's precisely why it's vanishing, not by accident, but by design. To understand why, we must look beyond distraction and into the structure beneath. We must ask not just what's happening to our minds, but why it's allowed to happen at all. And for that, we need to return to something primal, fear, because to think originally is to think alone, at least at first. It's to stand at the edge of the known and peer into something uncertain, unfinished, and often uncomfortable. And humans don't like discomfort. We like tribes, we like safety, we like approval. Carl Jung warned of this over a century ago, when he wrote about the collective unconscious. He described a layer of the human psyche shared by all, a pool of inherited symbols, instincts, and stories that bind society together. But Jung also warned of the danger of becoming entirely absorbed into this collective mind. When we forfeit individuality to belong, we stop listening to the voice within and begin echoing the voices around us. We merge into the group and mistake it for truth. We become, in Jung's words, identical with the collective psyche, and lose our personal discrimination, our capacity to judge critically. And what has modern life done? It has weaponized this desire to belong. Every scroll is a vote. This is what people like. Every post is a plea. Please, agree with me. Every trend is a beacon. Here's the new standard. Fall in line. We live not in communities, but in echo chambers engineered by algorithms that feed us familiarity, not challenge, agreement, not dissent. This is not mere technological convenience. It is psychological manipulation, because real thinking, original thinking, is disruptive. It slows things down. It resists categorization. It threatens consensus. And consensus is profitable. In his book, Amusing Ourselves to Death, Neil Postman warned us in 1985, the greatest threat to thinking wouldn't be censorship, it would be entertainment. We wouldn't burn books. We'd stop reading them. We wouldn't be silenced. We'd be so saturated with noise that no truth could be heard through it. He was right. And the consequences are here. Information is no longer something we explore. It's something we endure. Endless feeds, bite-sized content, 5-second dopamine hits. The systems around us are not designed for depth. They're designed for attention. And attention is not the same as awareness. Aldous Huxley foresaw this too. In Brave New World, he painted a dystopia not of repression, but of indulgence. A culture so sedated by pleasure, convenience, and spectacle that it no longer desired truth. Sound familiar? We're not chained. We're anesthetized. We're not being watched. We're watching ourselves on loop. And in this loop, thinking becomes dangerous. It interrupts the spell. It asks for stillness. It requires slowness. And there's no profit in slowness. So the system incentivizes mimicry. Think like the group, and you'll be rewarded. Say something risky, and you'll be punished or worse. ignored. Jean-Paul Sartre called this phenomenon mauvaise foi, bad faith. The act of lying to oneself in order to escape the burden of freedom, and we've become masterful at it. We tell ourselves we're informed because we read headlines. We tell ourselves we're thinking because we're reacting. We tell ourselves we're free because we're choosing between options that were already chosen for us. But true freedom isn't about options. It's about orientation being rooted in your own mind. That's what's been lost, because we've outsourced not just our time and data but our sense-making. When something happens in the world, we don't ask, what do I believe? We ask, what's the correct response? What's the popular opinion? What's the safe take? Even our rebellion is pre-packaged. We mistake algorithmic contrarianism for authentic opposition. We think that disagreeing with the mainstream makes us original, but often we're just reacting in a different direction within the same system. The system wants engagement, not enlightenment. And it's not just technology. Our educational models reward memorization, not inquiry. Our workplaces value productivity, not insight. Our social structures encourage politeness over honesty. The result: we have learned to think in fragments. We know how to signal intelligence. We know how to quote the right sources. We know how to appear thoughtful. But appearing is not being. And here's the twist. Most people sense this. They feel the loss, the hollowness, the ache. But instead of facing it, we mask it. We overcompensate with certainty. We cling to rigid ideologies. We fear nuance. We're terrified of saying, I don't know, because I don't know is vulnerable. It's a space where new thought might emerge, but only if we're brave enough to sit in it. Arthur Schopenhauer said it simply: talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. But how do you aim at what you can't see if you've stopped looking? This is the hidden crisis. Not that we are incapable of original thought, but that we no longer create the conditions for it. We rush, we react, we conform, we defend, we consume, and beneath it all, a deeper question stirs. Who are you when no one else is watching? What do you believe before someone tells you what to believe? What do you say before it's filtered through 10,000 screens? To find those answers, you must go where most refuse to go, into the wilderness of your own mind, where the ground is uneven, where no map exists, where the voices fall silent and the original voice begins to speak. You don't notice it. At first it's quiet, the way your mind begins to echo more than it creates, the way your beliefs harden, not from conviction, but from exhaustion, the way your silence grows, not from peace, but from submission. You tell yourself you're just tired, that it's been a long day, that you'll think more deeply tomorrow. But tomorrow never arrives, and something strange begins to happen. You start mistaking repetition for truth, agreement for clarity, familiarity for wisdom. This is the slow death of original thought, not with fire, but with fog, and in that fog, a dangerous thing occurs. You become programmable. You laugh at what you're told is funny. You get angry when you're signaled. 2. You hold opinions not because you've reasoned through them, but because they've been worn into your neural pathways like grooves in an old record. You are no longer choosing. You are reacting. Neuroscience confirms it. The brain, in its quest for efficiency, favors pattern recognition. Repeated thoughts become neural highways easier to travel, harder to leave. Cognitive ease becomes king. Discomfort gets labeled as threat, which means original thought by definition is difficult, and your brain resists it. But the brain's laziness is only half the problem. The other half is cultural, because we live in a system that punishes nuance and rewards certainty. In a world that wants you to take sides before you understand the issue, to speak before you've listened, to condemn before you've questioned, and so you adapt. You stop asking, you stop pausing, you stop thinking, not out of malice, but survival. You think in slogans, you communicate in outrage, you form identity through opposition, and this is how the machine wins. Not by telling you what to think, but by keeping you too reactive. To think at all, you become trapped in the prison of manufactured thought. Viktor Frankl, in Man's Search for Meaning, wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." But what happens when that space is erased? When the stimulus is constant, when the noise is endless, when the dopamine hits are just enough to keep you distracted, but never enough to satisfy. You get a society of automated minds, where free will is an illusion and originality is treated as rebellion, but it doesn't feel like a prison. That's the trick. It feels normal. You laugh when others laugh. You fear what others fear. You support what's trending. You cancel what's convenient. You adapt to survive socially, and in doing so, you amputate parts of yourself, the questioning parts, the skeptical parts, the imaginative parts, and those amputations have consequences. One day, you wake up and realize you don't know what you believe anymore. Not really. You just know what you've been repeating. You feel a strange emptiness, like there's a version of you buried beneath layers of performance, waiting to be excavated, but you've forgotten the tools. You look around and realize everyone seems just as lost, just as loud, just as certain, and just as disconnected. We have become a civilization of surface thoughts, fast, loud, brittle. We fear silence. We fear ambiguity. We fear not knowing. But worst of all, we fear standing alone with a thought that no one else has yet validated, so we wait. We wait for the culture to tell us what's acceptable. We wait for likes, for shares, for permission. And in that waiting, we grow dull, not stupid dull, intelligent, but unoriginal, curious, but conforming. We wear intellect like a costume. We consume opinions like fast food. We speak in recycled language. We don't just avoid deep thought. We fear it, because deep thought means letting go of borrowed certainty. It means questioning the tribe. It means risking rejection, and rejection in today's world can feel like death. So what? Do we create identities from our affiliations? We find safety in echo chambers. We mistake information access for understanding. We become hyper-informed and under-wise. It's not that we don't know facts. It's that we don't feel them anymore. We don't metabolize them into anything real. Because original thought requires solitude. It requires slowing down. It requires discomfort. And our lives are built on speed, connection, sedation. So, slowly, invisibly, we become shadows of ourselves, and the world reflects that back to us. Our art grows safer, our stories more predictable, our education more standardized, our politics more performative, creativity becomes commodified, spirituality becomes curated, philosophy becomes content. Even our rebellion is aesthetic. We call it authenticity, but it's still filtered. We call it expression, but it's still shaped by what we know will get attention. We are allowed to be different as long as it's profitable as long as it doesn't truly threaten the system. And this, perhaps, is the most chilling consequence of all. We begin to believe we are thinking for ourselves, even when we're not. We decorate the walls of our mental cage. We call it progress. We call it freedom. But deep down, we know something is off. A restlessness, a grief, a hunger, not for information, not for stimulation, but for authentic thought, for truth that hasn't been templated, for clarity that wasn't outsourced, for meaning that wasn't marketed. You start to wonder, what would I think if no one else could hear me? What would I believe if it cost me everything? Because until you ask that, until you live that, you are not free. You are not free. You are performed, predictable, programmable. But here's the thing. Even in a world built to erase you, there is still a part of you that remembers. The part that whispered ideas to you in childhood. The part that asked strange, beautiful questions when no one was watching. The part that felt wonder before you learned to perform. That part is not gone. It's buried, waiting. And the longer you ignore it, the louder your life will scream in confusion. Because this isn't just about thought, it's about identity. To lose your original thought is to lose yourself. But rebellion is possible. Turn everything off. The notifications, the scrolling, the newsfeed, the curated opinions, the performance of productivity. Turn it all off. Now sit with the noise inside you, that uncomfortable static, the anxious tug to check something, the itch to be affirmed. Do not run from it. Do not sedate it. Just listen. That is where the rebellion begins. Not with fireworks, not with outrage, but with stillness. Because to reclaim your mind in an age of noise is not just rebellion, it's revolution. But it won't feel heroic at first. It will feel terrifying. Because once you step out of the stream of collective thought, something strange happens. You begin to realize how much of your identity was borrowed. You begin to see the scaffolding of every belief you never questioned. Every opinion you adopted for approval. Every moral stance shaped not by integrity, but by imitation. And that's when you'll be tempted to retreat, to run back to the noise, to ask, who am I, if not this? But if you can resist the urge to numb, if you can sit in the disorientation long enough, something else begins to stir. A voice, small, cracked, but unmistakably yours. The voice you buried to fit in. The one you silenced so you wouldn't sound strange. The one you abandoned in order to be liked. That voice doesn't speak in trending phrases. It doesn't come pre-approved. It is slow. It is careful, and it is dangerous, because it tells the truth, not the convenient truth, not the branded truth, but the soul-born truth. The kind that could cost you everything. That's the moment you'll feel fear, because now you face the most ancient choice, authenticity or acceptance, integrity or belonging, truth or tribe. Most choose the tribe. And in doing so, they die without ever meeting themselves. But you don't have to. You can choose the harder path, the path of the thinking rebel, the creative heretic, the silent dissenter in a world screaming for conformity. But how? Not through rage, not through withdrawal, through presence. Here's where it begins. 1. Reclaim your attention. Attention is your most valuable currency. It is also your most stolen resource. If you do not choose what to attend to, the world will choose for you, and it will always choose what profits from your distraction. Every scroll, every ad, every outrage loop hijacks your neural circuitry. It wires you to react, not reflect. So begin here. Take your attention back. Delete what numbs, mute what manipulates. Stop feeding your consciousness to algorithms designed to flatten it. Read things that confuse you. Listen to thinkers who unsettle you. Ask questions that have no clear answer. Why? Because original thought is forged in the unknown, not the familiar. 2. Rebuild your inner dialogue. You have an inner voice, but chances are it's been overwritten by marketing, by media, by social scripts, so you need to rebuild it brick by brick. Start journaling, not to produce, but to uncover. Ask yourself dangerous questions. What do I pretend to care about, but secretly don't? What do I believe only because I fear the consequences of not believing it? What truth have I exiled from my consciousness to remain acceptable? Let your answers disturb you. Let them stretch you. Let them dismantle your illusion of self, because that's when the real self begins to emerge. 3. Develop a philosophy of resistance. You cannot think clearly if you don't know how to think, and thinking well requires structure. So study as an academic exercise, but as a survival skill. Read Marcus Aurelius, Nietzsche, Simone Weil, Camus, Jung Krishnamurti. Don't memorize quotes. Don't try to sound wise. Wrestle with them. Argue with them. Let them challenge your lens, not to find final answers, but to sharpen your capacity for depth. Because once you think philosophically, you become unprogrammable. 4. Create. Don't just consume. Consumption is passive. Creation is active, and to create is to risk. So write something no one agrees with. Make art that confuses. Say what you actually believe, even if your voice shakes. Do this not to be different for the sake of difference, but to test the boundaries of your mind, to feel the edges of your own originality. In a world obsessed with trends, creation is treason. Be a traitor to conformity. 5. Practice mental solitude. Jean-Paul Sartre said, "If you're lonely when you're alone, you're in bad company." You must become comfortable inside your own head. That means cultivating mental solitude time, where your thoughts are not being shaped by external noise. Take long walks without headphones. Stare at the sky. Let your mind wander without agenda. That's when buried truths rise. That's when old insights resurface. That's when original thought whispers again. Mental solitude is not optional. It's sacred. 6. Accept the cost. This is the hardest part. Original thought will isolate you. You'll lose followers. You'll be misinterpreted. You'll be mocked, even feared. Because people don't fear complexity, they fear those who expose theirs. You will become a mirror, and mirrors are rarely loved. But that's the price. You cannot be free and adored by everyone. You cannot be original and safe. You cannot be awake and accepted by the sleepwalkers. Asterisk. So choose. Conformity offers applause. Originality offers peace. The peace of living aligned. The peace of truth over comfort. The peace of looking in the mirror and seeing someone real. There will be days you want to give it up, when you envy the simplicity of the crowd, when you crave the ease of being told what to think. But those days are the test, because to think originally is not just to think differently, it is to feel deeply, to live deliberately, to love dangerously, and it's a rebellion not against others but against the parts of yourself that still want to disappear into the noise. But rebellion, true rebellion, is never loud. It is the quiet decision to stay awake, to stay you, to walk through the fog of borrowed minds and hold onto your soul like a flame dot, small, flickering. But yours, there comes a moment. After all the rebellion, the withdrawal, the reconstruction, when a strange silence settles, not the silence of defeat, but of clarity, and in that silence, a final realization dawns. It was never about the world. It was never about society. Not about education, not about technology, not even about culture. Those were only mirrors. The true enemy of original thought was you, not the you reading this with earnest intention. The other you, the invisible twin you carry inside, the one who fears the cost of becoming real. That self isn't evil. It's afraid of alienation, afraid of judgment, afraid of being cast into the wilderness without the map of consensus. So it mimics, it imitates, it builds palaces of pretense, all to survive. And in doing so, it kills the only part of you that was ever truly alive. The voice beneath the mask, the one that didn't want to be right, it wanted to be true. This is the final paradox. You were never truly silenced by the world. You silenced yourself to avoid losing the world. You abandoned original thought, not because it was too hard to find, but because it was too painful to live with. Once found, you saw glimpses of it late at night, in dreams, in the raw solitude of grief. And you buried it again, fearing it would cost you love, security, identity. And maybe it would have, because real thought demands real loss, the loss of innocence, the loss of blind belonging, the loss of the comforting illusion that someone else, somewhere, has the answers for you. But if you can survive that loss, you inherit something far greater, not certainty, not control, but freedom. That freedom, it turns out, is not the ability to do anything. It's the courage to see clearly, to see that most people live inside mental prisons with invisible bars, to see that thought is rarely your own until it has passed through the fire of solitude, doubt, and disillusionment, to see that being awake in a world of performance is a kind of divine madness, and if you stay with that madness long enough, it transforms, it becomes vision, the ability to look at life not just through your eyes, but through your soul. You begin to see things others miss, the hollow eyes behind the smiling influencer, the desperation hiding in the successful professional, the terror behind the overconfident opinion, the deep hunger behind every carefully packaged identity. You begin to see not just through the noise, but into it. And what you find is heartbreaking, because once you think originally, the world becomes both more beautiful and more tragic. You see how much potential is lost to mimicry, how many lives are lived on autopilot, how many voices go unheard because they were unworthy, but because they were inconvenient. And yet, you also begin to see something else, the sacredness of trying, the courage in the one person who dares to create something strange, the beauty in the flawed thinker who speaks anyway, the rebellion in every quiet act of honesty in a dishonest age. You begin to understand. Original thought isn't about being brilliant. It's about being brave. It's about standing in your truth without a script, without applause, without certainty. It's about risking yourself in a world that has monetized your silence. And here's the final, deepest truth. Your original thoughts are not yours alone. They come through Ubot. They are part of something ancient, a lineage of minds that refused to die quietly. You are not just a rebel. You are a continuation of the philosopher who questioned gods, of the poet who defied the empire, of the mystic who whispered against the noise of kings, of the child who asked why, even when told to be quiet. When you think originally, you are not alone. You are joining an invisible tribe, a brotherhood and sisterhood of the deeply awake, a lineage of firekeepers, those who protect the light of unapproved thought. In an age of curated belief, you carry their torch now, and it will cost you, but it will awaken you. So what happens when you let that voice live? When you allow your soul to speak louder than your fear? When you write the thing, say the truth, follow the thread that doesn't lead to popularity, but to purpose? What happens is this: you come home to yourself, to the only self that was ever real, the one buried beneath years of imitation, the one that speaks not for attention, but from necessity, the one that doesn't crave applause because it finally has integrity. And in that home, there is peace, not comfort, not ease, but the peace of a mind uncolonized, the peace of a soul no longer rented out to trends, the peace of waking up and realizing you are free. Cinematic ending, picture yourself years from now, older, weathered, but clear-eyed. You're sitting alone, not lonely, but full, and someone younger asks you the question that echoes through every generation. How do I find my voice? And you will answer with no arrogance, just truth. You don't find it, you uncover it. It was always there beneath the noise, beneath the need to belong, beneath the fear of being different. Then you'll pause and say, just listen. When everything else is silent, that voice will speak, and when it does, don't ignore it, because it will cost you the world you know, but it will give you the one thing worth having, yourself.